I'm Jim Kunkel, and welcome to Build Out. This is a brand new year, 2022, and my first guest is Stacey Crew. Stacey, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. So excited to be here today.
It's great to have you, and for the launch of the second season of Build Out here on LinkedIn Live and other platforms as well. Hey, Stacey, before we would start our conversation regarding becoming a published author, could you provide a professional background and talk about some of the publications and the books that you've published yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm Stacey Crew. I've been in the marketing and publishing industry for probably more than 25 years at this point. It's hard to believe. I've kind of navigated through both marketing and publishing, as well as some health coaching, which I'll talk a little bit about. But professionally, I started as the managing editor for a small computer technology publishing company. So, and in addition to that, I worked in marketing for a software company. So I've been around technology for a long time. At one point, I decided to write a book. It's just kind of the way my brain organizes information, and it was almost like, I want to say, an out-of-body experience in a lot of ways, because it just naturally came to me. So that's how I discovered self-publishing, which I know we'll talk a little bit more about during this segment. So publishing has just been a love of mine, and I love to help people as well. So getting people's books out into the universe is just a mission that's really important for me. So I have self-published a couple of books. I started working on a marketing team for an author. We built his brand. And since then, we've published 2 books for him. Just over the last year alone, I've acquired 14 books for a publisher on the East Coast. And so the way I support authors is to not only help them publish their book, but promote their book too, because it's 2 different things: publishing and then promoting. You know, we want to make sure that book gets in the hands of readers. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It continues to be an interesting journey. I think more and more people are publishing books these days, and they need the support to get those books into the world.
Yeah, a couple of friends of mine, professional friends of mine, they're into self-publishing, and with it's very visual. And you and I, prior to the broadcast here, we're talking a little bit about some of the changes I'm going to look to do into 2022 involving newsletters, e-newsletters and things like that. But also I'm looking to publish more articles. And on LinkedIn, for example, I took advantage last year, more so probably the previous year, with articles. And I wrote a lot of technical articles based off my experience in the industry that I currently work in, but also too from observations I've had in the field, and then also working with other experts. And boy, I'll tell you, the amount of interaction that I gained from those articles was phenomenal. The views were very high. The engagement was where it really needed to be for me as a professional, and also working in business development. So I saw a great kind of synergy when it came to the written, but also now that I'm involved in doing video work as well, and live broadcasting, the synergies that I see coming together are going to be really kind of help push the content that I'm doing, but also to help really communicate better with my viewers, and also to those professionals out there that I need to be connected with and be communicating with on a daily and a monthly basis as well. So, looking at self-publishing, when it's saying that it's fun and beneficial, self-publishing, generally means creating and selling a book online, outside of the traditional publishing industry. I think most of the viewers that are watching us right now, they're used to a traditional model where, a writer will author the book, and then they typically have some people that will help them with the proofreading. They might have an editor who will come in and help edit the book, and then it goes on for a final review. The publisher will take it, print it, work out that distribution. I remember going back to bookstores, and not to say I don't do it today, but everything online is so much easier and more convenient. But I remember the days of, going to the bookstore on a monthly basis and finding I was a big science fiction reader, so always finding some of the science fiction books that were coming out to read. So when we talk about really the traditional publishing industry and we look at how that works, how do some of the companies out there work, when it comes to finding authors and then having royalties and things like that?
Yeah, so real quick, I do want to jump back to something you said
Yes.
about publishing. Whether it's an article or a book, it's such a great way to be able to put your thoughts, your information out there so that people can get to know you. So whether you're doing it in the form of LinkedIn articles or a blog or a book, it really shortens the time frame to get to know someone. So I always encourage, whether it is writing a blog or if you're planning on doing a book, but just to get that info out there. So it's great that you're getting that engagement. So publishing has changed over the last, I would say 10 to 12 years, especially. And self-publishing now is a very popular way to get information out to readers. Traditional publishing, unless you've got already established a big following, it doesn't really work the way it used to. You used to maybe get an agent. The agent would pitch your book to a publisher, one of the big publishers. You might get an advance, and then your book gets published. You're still largely responsible for the marketing and all of that, but that has changed because of the other models that are available. So below traditional publishing, you've got now what's called a co-publishing or a hybrid model. And what happens there is you're working with a publisher, so you're still largely experiencing the traditional publishing. You've got the publisher who's got the staff of editors. They're doing the quality check. They are doing the cover design, the layout, everything that's involved to get the book to market. And I love that model, actually, because although there might be an investment on the part of the author, so it's sort of like a pay to play in a way, but you can focus on the marketing. The publisher focuses on what they're skilled at, the editing, the cover design, all of that. You get to focus on building your platform and all of the marketing that's involved in actually getting the book in the hands of readers. Then you have the self-publishing model, and that's where you take on all of that responsibility yourself. So this can be a little problematic if you're new to self-publishing because there are a lot of unknowns, right? You step into something new, so there's the learning curve. You are managing not only the writing, but then possibly the editing, where you hire someone to do the editing. You've got to do the cover design, hire someone. So there's still all of those costs involved that you might, for some, you might be better suited just going the hybrid model because you're still going to be outlaying those costs. It might be less expensive. And it also really depends on what your goals are, what your budget is. The size of the book. So if you're doing a simple ebook, self-publishing might be the way to go if it's a 50, 60 page book. But if you're doing something more involved, like a book of fiction, perhaps, a very involved business book, it really might, in the end, save you more time and money to go with the hybrid publishing model.
Yeah, I can see the advantages of the hybrid because when you really look at the traditional, at least based on my research on the traditional method, there's a lot of hurdles that you have to overcome. And there's also a time line that seems to be more extended than short. The beautiful thing about going into, let's see, an ebook or e-publications, and to your point, I think you mentioned about 50 to 60 pages, those type of, I always like to call those micro books where they're more focused on specific titles, but they can be rapidly rolled out there if you're working. And I believe some of the services that you can use, and please, if there's more, let me know. If you're looking to do ebooks, I believe Amazon is probably one that's used a lot for the delivery of ebooks. Are there other services out there, or is Amazon pretty much the only game?
There are now surfacing are companies that actually help people self-publish. So it's still the self-publishing model, but they will guide you through the process. So, there's also the piece of the puzzle that you need to get the ISBN numbers, you need to register the copyrights and all of that. So some of these self-publishing companies will also help you do that too.
And typically, do you have any type of budget? What's the expectation for someone who might want to go that route? A few $1,000s or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you're self-publishing, all of the editing and everything aside, you can do that for relatively inexpensive. I mean, you just get the ISBN numbers. You are able to upload your book to Ingram Spark for $50. But you've got all of those other, because you want your book to be formatted properly and all of that. So you would have to come to Ingram with your files ready. So again, a lot has to do with the learning curve, and time too. If someone has the time to research, they can save money, but we also need to remember that time is money, right? So I would highly encourage people to consider that when they're considering self-publishing. Consider how quickly you make decisions, your ability to research, your ability to ask for help, all of these things. Otherwise, you could be spinning your wheels, and in the long run, it could cost you money. So really be certain on the goal of the book, and can you actually make money from the book? Because oftentimes I like to tell people, to be fully transparent, that you will make some money from the book, but it's typically you're not making your money necessarily from the book. You're making your money more on the opportunities that come from having the book. So when I work with people, I guide them through that process of developing a budget, developing goals, and really seeing where the actual earnings are going to come from. Because if you go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to, sell all these books, it's just, they might be disappointed.
That's a great point. And to roll back, when you were talking about earlier a little bit about going on your own and doing it yourself, I think having that hybrid or that third party or professional like yourself who has experience, really know what works and what doesn't work. And then also to understanding anytime you have experience in doing things, there's a huge benefit for others to take advantage of that. Because myself, if I'm going to publish on my own, I'm learning everything from scratch. And then that means I'm making mistakes. That means that maybe I'm also my own roadblock. And also, too, it could cost me a lot more money than I was willing to put into it. The other part that you brought up about being a publisher, and this is the way I would view it. If I was, say, for example, a professional coach, I would hope that my publications could at least break even, cover the expenses to put it together. Where I will make up my profits going to be booking coaching opportunities. Maybe I land a big corporation. Maybe I land a speaking engagement. Maybe I land some type of a contract with multitudes of professionals that are looking for me to help coach them, who were inspired by reading the book or the topic that I had covered. So to your point, I think looking at these publications, not to, you're going to be the next Stephen King, you're going to become somebody that becomes multi-famous and very rich from your book. It's a great opportunity to augment and supplement the business activities that you're looking to achieve. But it also sets you aside or sets you ahead of your competition, because let's face it, any job that you have, either be it a professional job or any type of career, you're always going to have competition that you're going to have to overcome and outshine to be able to proceed and move forward. Now, I had taken a look at when it comes to for a first-time author to get published, and the way what I found based on my research with 4 ways to publish a book include, partnering with an agent, entering into literary contest where you might get discovered that way, where you're writing some short stories, or maybe you're writing papers if it's business related or scientific related. Obviously, self-publishing an ebook and then using book publishing services. are there any other groups or organizations out there, and this is me just thinking aloud, that really have an opportunity for people to join and to, become a publisher from being part of a group, a collective, or some type of an organization focused on publishing industry?
So the experience that I've had, I've helped publish a lot of business books, and that for me has worked really well because I understand that, what we just talked about the revenue not coming from necessarily from the book sales, but more from the speaking engagements, the consulting, the coaching, those kinds of things. So when it comes to business books, I've had some authors who have been invited to contribute a chapter to a book. So there are some, I'm thinking of one, and I can't think of his name right now, but he's a business guy, and he writes about particular topics. So I think this one had to do with culture in the workplace. So he invited one of my authors to contribute a chapter to his book, and he does a whole series of them. So that might be an option, especially for someone in the business field, but also in the wellness field. I've had a wellness coach who is one of my clients, and she contributed a chapter to a wellness book. And again, it was kind of a collaborative effort, an opportunity for her to get her information and her work out there. And she actually, that book was published before she published her first book. So it was kind of nice to already have that in the works. I'm not familiar with the process of writing, maybe getting an award for something and getting exposure. I think that would suit or fit more for fiction, which is not my realm, but I'm sure it happens. But as far as an agent, that's how I actually published my first book, was through an agent. And it was a business connection that I had with another writer who introduced me to her agent. And it was, I don't know if it was a lucky break or I was just having a good day, and I got introduced to her. And then she took my self-published book and pitched that to Adams Media, which is now owned by Simon & Schuster. So I bring that up because if someone really wants to get their work into a physical format, self-publishing can be done, and then that book can be taken to shop with publishers. And oftentimes, at least for me, it's worked a couple of times where I think I've probably got a little bit more attention, maybe because I had demonstrated that I could publish the book on my own, and then it was picked up by an actual publisher. So that's an option too.
Yeah, that's an option I didn't even think about. Regarding the literary type of contest, it was definitely more tied to I'd say the fiction side of the spectrum. And you focus a lot on business topics, and you had mentioned about wellness doing really well. The topics related to wellness have done very well, especially over the last 2 years because of our current situation that we're in. And a lot of people are really turning to, self-help also to really motivate themselves. So those motivational books have done real well. Wellness seems to be a very hot topic. Related to business topics, I'm curious to get your opinion on what topics are going to be, or currently right now, what are some of the hot topics related to business that if someone's looking to publish, maybe they might want to pursue?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm seeing leadership and culture being really big topics. Culture, because especially, with younger generations now, their expectations are different. In order to keep these younger employees, things can't function the way they did 30 years ago, right? Or maybe even 20 years ago. So there's a lot of talk about culture, keeping employees, creating an environment where people feel valued and understood and heard and all of that. Also leadership. being able to pass the baton along, teaching, again, younger employees how to conduct themselves and become leaders themselves. And the leadership and the culture really tie in together, right? Because, a leader the leader sets the culture, right? So if a leader is really skilled at creating a culture where people do stay because they feel valued, those two topics just keep coming up over and over again. Also, speaking of like COVID and the lockdown and all of that, I acquired a book from a woman named Juana Catalina Rodriguez. She's a very interesting woman, businesswoman. She lives in France. She's from South America. And she wrote a book called Unsettled Disruption. So she talks about, her book is very timely because it talks a lot about how things changed and shifted during the beginning of COVID and how they continue to change. So those seem to be the main business topics that are very popular right about today.
Yeah, a couple of the books that I've recently read that I found very helpful for myself. The first one is from Eleni Anastos, and it's Finding Purpose in the Pain. And Eleni is a prosperity coach and a professional coach as well. In her book, she relayed a lot of her, I would call them life lessons, and how they can help you reinvent yourself and really take sometimes tragic situations, turn them around, and really better yourself and become a stronger person, both personally but also professionally. And then MJ Calloway's book, Bounce Up, and MJ being a two-time cancer survivor, she is local here with me in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've become very good friends. Eleni as well has become a friend of mine. But in reading MJ's book, that Bounce Up book is just very powerful. The third publication, which MJ was involved in, which is 21, and in 21 it had stories from 21 women entrepreneurs, and I was really inspired reading how some of the businesses that these women had started, and also learning sometimes with the struggles that they had to overcome when it came to establishing their business. Really strong motivational. So for me, I think the last, let's say since really the last 2 years, I've been looking more into the motivational side. For the streaming and the content I've been doing, some of the most popular in season 1 episodes really dealt with reinvention, also improving yourself personally and professionally, and then also focusing on mindfulness, and also when it comes to this, what I would call self-help as well. So I can really see where that would apply in the business realm as well. Obviously, LinkedIn is such a powerhouse when it comes to business topics. And, I always encourage everyone, too, that there are a lot of great professionals that put out newsletters that focus heavily on business topics and things like that. When it comes to the big question that I would have, I discovered you through working with MJ. And how do people find Stacey Crew? All the Stacey Crews are out there that do what you do. Obviously, you do it better than anybody else.
I like to think so.
How do people find you? Because I really, in the research I did, it just didn't make it easy for me to try to figure out, well, where do I go to? Like if I want creative stuff done, I can go to Fiverr, but I don't think Fiverr exists for publishing.
No, and I wanted to circle back just real quick about what you were saying about motivational and all of that. And it's funny because I think in my mind, even though I primarily work with business authors and wellness authors, I do tend to sort of separate them in my mind with like being business and then being more self-help motivational. So, but there is a really nice crossover today between those two areas because everybody loves a good story, right? It helps you connect to the author. It helps you see them as a human being. And I more and more of that is really coming to life these days. People are feeling more apt to share their personal stories and really connect with people on that level. So anyway, I loved what you were saying about that, about the stories and the motivation and inspiration and all. And I think there's definitely a place for that in the business arena as well. It's they partner together very nicely. And one other thing too, I'm also a certified health coach. So, and I recently published my book, Mind Body Kitchen. And I mentioned the health coaching because I think I bring a unique perspective to the publishing process with that, because anyone who has published a book knows that it's a long game. Like, you're not just like, boom, boom, I'm publishing the book and we're going to, move on. You really need to pace yourself. And there's so much that needs to be considered during that process. So from that perspective, I'm able to help people, with the mindset, with all of that. But to find me, the name of my company is Ease Communications. So it's easecommunications.com. I had mentioned to you earlier, Jim, that I have an online program that's coming out. It launches February 1st. So if you go to easecommunications.com/publish me. Anyway, there's a link on my site that says online training. If you want to be informed, if anybody wants to be informed when the program is available, they can fill out their name and all of that and email address, and I'll let them know as soon as it launches. But that program will support people through what I call the 4 stages of publishing. It's planning, so creating that solid foundation for your project. Promote. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Gosh, this is all so new to me, and I'm launching the plan part on February 1st. Then comes the platform, because we need to have a platform as an author, right, to create that platform. Publish, and then promote. So it walks people through all of those stages. But the best way to find me is eastcommunications.com.
That's great. And for the viewers, I will
Yeah.
make sure they have links for everything so you can check out Stacey's program. And I think that program will benefit a lot of people, because when I really looked into getting into publishing, if that's something I want to pursue, and it's an interest of mine, you're unclear on a lot of things. And it's not a 1, 2, 3 easy step process. It seems to be a little bit more. Again, you need to really rely on someone that's experienced and really knows what they're doing versus you trying to figure out what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Stacey, for our final topic that we're going to cover, and I wanted to look at, for everyone viewing, what's a typical cost to publish a book? I'm going to read through some of these things, and then you can agree or disagree and support it or say, no, that's totally wrong. So, looking, when I had really dived into it, for what I found, the cost to publish a first book, and it can have a dynamic range. It can be anywhere from a minimum of, let's say, $100 up to $5,000 is, for someone who's looking to really launch that first book. Is that realistic to say it's going to be, let's say, $1,000 to $5,000?
Okay, if we keep in mind, again, that time is money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it might be $100 out of pocket, but again, all of the time, it's so hard to say without really diving into, again, what somebody's goals are. And it's important to always consider the quality of the work too.
Yeah.
To get eyes on it before it's actually published, because I don't want to say you only have one shot, but, to get your book out there. But if somebody's reading your material, you want them to read something that is organized well, it's digestible, it makes sense, it has examples, it's formatted well, all of those things. So could you do it for $100 if you write the book yourself, do all the formatting, design the cover, and then just upload it for distribution? Yeah. Would you want to? I don't know if I'd recommend that. Co-publishing, it depends on the word count largely. So if you've got a book that's 20,000 words, you might be able to do it for $5. And it's important to consider everything that would come along with that co-publishing. And there are a lot of different co-publishing houses out there. They'll offer different services. They'll offer different timelines. Some might be able to get it published sooner than others. So it's really important to weigh everything out. But, getting some quotes, doing the research, getting the information, and again, establishing your goals, and considering the opportunities that will come from having a published book.
Yeah, I echo back on the part about, the $100 book. There's so much risk involved, and we learn every day. Just go to Twitter. People post the wrong things on Twitter. They literally can have their lives professionally ruined. So you don't want to put a book out there that's going to really be problematic for you, could cause you more harm than good. The other thing too to look at, the long haul when it comes to the other potential opportunities for you. So really kind of looking at going budget on a budget and lowballing it might not be to your advantage, and involving a third party or other professionals is probably going to be very beneficial for you, so that you don't make a image mistake or fact mistake that could get you into a whole lot of trouble. The other thing I found too, when I was looking at, online here, some things to consider, self-publish, you can publish it on Amazon. It might be best to budget $2,000 to $4,000 for third-party editing, formatting, and cover design. And what I've learned in video work, both on my YouTube channel, here on platforms like LinkedIn, that thumbnails, that art images that go with the broadcast or the videos, they can really make or break. So I can imagine cover art, although it sounds like it should be real simple, slap a picture, slap a title, put your name on it, you're good to go. There's a science behind, I'm sure, on the when it comes to the book graphics and everything like that. And that's something you don't really want to skimp on. The other thing too, where you're looking at the traditional publisher, sometimes they have upfront costs that are fixed for you. There are certain arrangements you can make. If your book is good enough, maybe there's some type of royalty, there's some type of sharing going on. And then, when I looked at the book publishing, just the book publishing itself, the typical cost is about $3,000 to cover editing, cover design, and proofreading professional services. Does that sound pretty reasonable? $3,000?
Yeah, it does. It does. If you're considering the hybrid model, the investment, you can do it sort of a la carte. So you can hire an editor, you can hire a cover designer, but keep in mind that some of these hybrid companies, the hybrid publishers, they will do all of those things for the full price. So I've had, for example, a publisher that I work pretty closely with, we've had authors come to us and say, oh, well, I've already spent $5,000 on editing. And I'm like, sorry, it's going to have to go through our process, because publishers want to have the control over the quality. So it always goes through the process. So this is why it's important in the early stages to start looking at the different publishing options, so that, it might make more sense for an author to just finish their manuscript and then submit it to the publisher and see what the cost would be for their particular hybrid model, versus trying to get it perfect, which there is no such thing, by the way, but trying to get it as perfect as possible before submitting it to a publisher. They may wind up saving a lot of money in the long run, and time.
Yeah, time and frustration too. To your point, I think when it comes down to the budget aspect of it, and really kind of wrapping everything up that we talked about, we looked at the aspect of someone doing, small ebooks, maybe they're 50, 60, pages. Mm-hmm. Those are very reasonable opportunities for people, and also when you look at publishing let's say you're publishing a multi-chapter book, a lot larger book. What do you recommend for someone who's brand new, who's passionate, wants to write, and has, for example, the business topics or the wellness topics? What do you recommend them? How they should start to dip their toes into the publishing waters?
Great question. I would say, because if you're writing and you're inspired to write a book, just keep writing. Number one, get that, just keep writing. At the same time, start talking with, or start thinking about the goal for the book. Start thinking about your following. If somebody has a significant following on LinkedIn, for example, or maybe, on Instagram. So some wellness professionals who I follow on Instagram, they might have 35,000 followers, 75,000 followers. That's going to look a little different to a publisher. So they may have a better opportunity to approach even a hybrid publisher for a traditional deal. So it's really thinking about your pitch as a professional. Start thinking about putting together a book proposal. Your synopsis of the book, your marketing plans, because that's another thing too, is that it's probably why I like working with business professionals a lot, is they understand the marketing aspect. So typically a business writer will come to a publisher with a proposal, with their marketing plans. And publishers really like to see that because they don't want a book to fall flat. They don't want to publish it and then it just, sits on the shelf, or metaphorically, because that doesn't really happen nowadays. Most sales are done online. I think about 90%. So yeah, think about the marketing plan and then your budget. How much you're willing to invest in having your work published. But do this, keep the writing going, and then start to investigate the opportunities and the options.
The other thing too, quick question for you on this, if I'm a professional coach or whatever profession I'm in, I'm writing business topics, let's say, you want to make sure that you're not also interjecting too much of what your professional services are. So you want to write purely about the topic and try to turn off the sales part of it. That's something you recommend too?
Yes. A book is, so the writing of the book and the material that you put into a book, you want to show your expertise in the field that you're talking about. It's definitely not a place to be selling your services. The book supports selling your services. So, and this is where a lot of personal growth really happens with the writing process. When you go into writing a book and you come out the other end having published a book, you're a different person. You're a changed person, or at least you should be, because you're really digging deep there. I mean, you should be, and I don't say should lightly, and I don't use that word too often, but it's really an opportunity to pull out your best work, your best, just all of what you've learned, because that's what people are kind of looking to when they pick up a book, especially if it's a business book. They want to know, what have you learned? What are you going to teach me? So you're really, teaching your readers. And then the marketing of the book, that's where you sell the book. That's where you point out the benefits and it's definitely a different feel. And again, I'll go back to me working with business writers, because they oftentimes understand that. Whereas, if somebody's writing a book of fiction, the chances of them knowing about marketing, that's a whole nother skill set. So it's a little trickier. I tend to kind of stay away from that area, because I'm so marketing minded, but I'm also, I understand the structure and the book development, what actually needs to be in the book, as opposed to the marketing, which comes secondary. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. we've been reading written word for thousands of years, and I'm sure thousands of years in the future, we'll be reading it. Maybe instead of having a physical book or reading on a tablet, we'll be reading it inside of our heads, whatever new technologies come up and come out for us in the future. Stacey, what an awesome conversation to kick off the first part of 2022. And Happy New Year's. If I didn't say that to you earlier, I appreciate you being the first guest for the second season of Build Out. So, Stacey, how can the viewers get in contact with you?
Thanks for asking. So they can find me at eastcommunications.com. I've created a new online training that is launching February 1st. And it's a 4-module series that will help authors through the process. It starts with planning your project, creating your platform, publishing, and then promoting. That they can find me on East Communications under the online training tab, and I will let them know when the program launches and it's available.
Stacey, thank you for sharing that. And also, once again, thank you for coming on to Build Out live stream. I so greatly appreciate having you as a guest, and I look forward to hopefully you and I having a continuing conversation into 22 and beyond here. Stacey, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to interview you today.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's been my pleasure, and wishing you all the best in the new year. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Join me next Wednesday, January 12th. My guest is Stuart Salters, Vice President of Government Relations with American Public Gas Association. Stuart and I will have a conversation on Government Relations 101.